The growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on Sunday.
This is about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Guys up, giddy up. Welcome to the Failure to Stop podcast channel. Today's show is brought to you by ghostbed.com/Wolfpack and factormeals.com. Promo code Wolfpack50. Wolfpack50. Really good, delicious meals. You can form those meals to meet any needs that you have, whether you are trying to go calorie conscious or you want to go in high in protein. Factor Meals, it's got like 300 different recipes on the menu. Basically what you do is you join factormeals.com, you pick out your meals for the week. They're prepared by chefs, mailed directly to your door. You want 3 a week, they'll give you 3 a week. You want 5 a week, they'll give you 5, 7, whatever you want to do. They'll create these menus right to your specifications, and then you open them up. They're beautiful packaging, and you've got meals ready to go. You slap them in the microwave, heat them up 2 minutes, even on a Walmart style microwave like that they have at every police department or first responder agency across the country. Even 2 minutes on one of those POSs will get your Factor meal fresh and ready to go, and they are delicious. We appreciate you guys tuning into our Friday breakdown, covered by myself and 30-ish year detective, the easy, the steezy, the beautiful Drew Breezy. Drew, thank you for always being here. Always.
You always give me too much credit for the detective stuff. Like I think I spent more time as a detective supervisor than I did as a detective, but I spent a fair amount of time as a detective, in fairness. So okay. I appreciate that. And by the way, what is the plural of chef? Is it chef?
Chef-I.
Knives?
Chef-I? The chefies? Chef-I?
No, that's antenna. Very clearly. So we have a very special guest today. If you remember back probably about midsummer, maybe July, early July, we did a 3-part series on Daniel Holtzclaw, an Oklahoma City Police Department police officer. Just a generally good guy, grew up a cop's kid, played football, the whole 9 yards. And he just wanted to serve the public. He was involved in a traffic stop on his way home one night. Things took an immediate 90-degree turn in his life. So with us tonight, we have his sister, who is named Jenny Holtzclaw. Is it Jenny or Jennifer? Which do you prefer?
You can call me Jenny.
Okay, Jenny.
Yeah. All
right. So I'm Drew, Jenny. It's nice to meet you. I'm very, very glad you're here.
Thank you for having me on.
What we normally do is we take police cases such as this one, and we just kind of thoroughly break it down. Eric's got some time on the street as an officer. I got some time, in the law enforcement field also, and I've got a bit of an administrative background also. So we just kind of objectively look at police cases because we're not always right, and we want to make sure that, in the sense of appealing to the first responders that we entertain and inform, we also bridge the gap for the community that we serve, because we want them to see that, we do ask tough questions and we do hold officers accountable. This was an egregious case, in my opinion, because the wrong officer is being held accountable in this. And again, this is my opinion, but it's a rare opportunity that we have a family member that we can talk about, because one of the themes that we explore on this show is the greater mental health of the entire law enforcement family, especially when something like this happens, like when somebody is either wrongfully accused, or even if they're just accused of something, like people may not realize or understand what kind of toll it takes on the family. So I'm just going to turn it over to you for the time being. Just, walk us through. I know that this started in 2014, and just for a frame of reference, we had an anniversary the other day of Mike Brown's shooting, which was in August of 2014. This happened 2 or 3 months prior to that. So tell us what you remember and what you know.
And Jenny, before you get started, sorry, Jenny, but before you get started, just know we've done a 3-part series on Daniel Holtzclaw on the Failure to Stop podcast channel, all under breakdowns. So for those of you who are behind and you want the totality of the case, we did 3 2-hour segments. That's 6 hours total on this case. If you have questions, go back to those episodes, and those questions, well, this is more of a follow-up to those 6. I'm sorry, to that 6 hours worth of podcast content for free right here by the Feather Stop Podcast. If you want to support us, you can join our Patreon, get extra content also for $3 a month, and then our paid YouTube also. And you can have all these things you can find at featherstoppodcast.com. So, Jenny, knowing that we've already covered this in great detail, you're kind of the follow-on. You're kind of the icing on the cake for this case for us.
Yeah. So Daniel's case happened back in 2014. So gosh, it's been almost 9 years now, right? I guess 8 years. It's been a while since it first started. And it's definitely been an interesting roller coaster, as I would say, just because when we first found out about it, Daniel obviously called us and let us know what was happening. And during that time, obviously, like you had mentioned, Drew, the climate at that time was very scary in the sense of there was a lot of riots happening around that same time frame as the Baltimore and then the Ferguson riots that were happening during that summer. And so when Daniel had told us about what was happening, it was kind of like in the back of our mind, about in general, just how that case was, right? And
what was the first thing he told you? How did you find out?
That he was under investigation, that he had been interrogated. That's what he used as his wording. He had been interrogated by sex crimes, and there was allegations of sexual assault. And that was initially as that first one, Janie Liggins, the one.
Yeah. What was his what was his attitude? What was did he call you personally? Did he call the parents?
I believe he called my parents first, and then after that he had called me.
And what was his attitude? Was he scared? Was he kind of whatever? What was
I think
his...
more shocked in the sense of confused, I think is more like it. And for us, it was wait, hold on. I wanted to know more questions. My parents obviously wanted more questions. And, we just thought it was kind of like a formality that the detectives were questioning him. And then Daniel thought his name was going to be clear. There was nothing that we were too worried about or anything like that. So that was about June timeframe. As the investigation kept on proceeding into July and August, that's when we were like, why is this taking so long? Daniel should have been cleared. And at this time, the detectives started searching out for women. And by this time, they started accumulating more females that would corroborate the story of Daniel supposedly also sexual assaulting them. And then at this time, the news hit back, I think it was in August of 2014, when they finally made the arrest of Daniel. And so then you had people that wanted to jump in on this. And then they came to the police department saying that Daniel also sexually assaulted them, when in fact we were able to prove that Daniel never did with those allegations, especially whenever he was placed on administrative leave. We still had people coming forward saying that Daniel had sexually assaulted them. And
that was a question I had. Was he placed on administrative leave immediately after?
Immediately, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your feeling at this point in time? How you as an individual, how were you feeling about
before
hearing all
it
this?
made the news? I was like, there's nothing to worry about, right? I had asked Daniel several questions. Is there anything we need to be notified by? Is there anything that we need to know about? And that was kind of my always, to him is we don't want to be shocked by anything, right? And then as soon as the news hit, obviously that really, I would say, put a big shocker on us, because we weren't even prepared that that they were going to make an arrest to Daniel. So we only found out just because it hit the news. It was breaking news. It was on people's cell phones. I had a friend message me and say, hey, is this your brother? And from there, I called my parents. I remember that day like it was yesterday, just because how it was that much of an impact, obviously on all of our lives. And from there, it forever changed our family's dynamic in that aspect.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just, there's a couple details I'm wondering. Was there an indictment? Was it a grand jury, or was there just a warrant that was issued for his arrest? And then how did that go? Had he already retained some type of attorney or retained counsel at that point? Did he turn himself in, or, did he get a knock on the door and all of a sudden just somebody put handcuffs on him, or how did that?
Yeah, so he was actually at the gym and he was leaving the gym. So they must have been following him or something in the sense because they knew exactly where he was. So Daniel was at the gym at the time. They came and I think he was leaving the gym. So he was in the parking lot and that's when they had arrested him. And Daniel had retained an attorney after his interrogation, after he did that 2-hour interrogation with the 2 detectives. And then from there, I'm trying to recap everything. And then from there, I don't know if there wasn't a grand jury if I remember correctly, as far as I think they just had, the DA said, yes, we're going to go ahead and prosecute him. And I think that's kind of where, they had some kind of, I guess, formality for them to be able to arrest him at that point, probable cause or whatever the reason was at that time.
And so how are you, again, feeling? What were you, I know that's a juvenile question
so many
to ask
different,
you, but how were you feeling?
So many different thoughts going through my head. How could they arrest him if they don't have any evidence? And that kind of got the dialogue going about learning about how they can actually, arrest someone. And then what were the allegations at this time? So I wanted to learn more, what were they able to arrest him on? We were all shocked just because, my last name is not common, right? So a lot of people immediately had reached out and said, hey, is this your brother? So I was kind of I had to say, yes, I knew about this. Not that it was a shock, but I knew that Daniel was underneath investigation at this time, right? And so all of that it just basically exploded. So at that time, it was very, all kinds of emotions, stressful, worried, how are we going to get through this? Just all kinds of things at that time. It's just all those feelings, just shock. I think shock was probably the best word I could probably say at that time.
Geography wise, what was the family structure? Did you all live close to one another?
Yeah. So my parents lived in Enid, Oklahoma, which is about an hour and a half, 2 hours north of where Daniel's police, where he lived, and then also where that police department was, since he worked for Oklahoma City. And then I was living out in California at the time. And so, I heard about it. Obviously through friends. So it wasn't on local news that I saw it come on at the time. And so, and then my sister lives in Norman, which is a suburb of Oklahoma City. So we lived pretty close. I always, went back for holidays. And then same thing, we'd always meet up with my family. During college time, when Daniel was in college, he would come back and then we'd all meet up in Oklahoma as kind of the hub point of family gatherings and so forth.
What was the family climate like at this time? Was there anybody in charge? Was there were you guys in a group chat or a text, or what was the family climate like based on the arrest?
Yeah, definitely text message. I text my parents almost all the time with my sister too. So we were in a family chat, but yeah, a lot of communication, what's going on. At this time, since Daniel had retained an attorney, we were able to communicate with him and say what do we do? And for the most part, we were advised don't say anything to the media, just they're going to continue on the investigation. And we were kind of just leaning on our attorney at this point. What do they have? And so the attorney had to get the information from the police at that time, just to see what the charges were. So that's kind of where it all started. And it didn't just end at August, throughout August, and then it continued. I think they were still continuing with their investigation at this time. And that was in 2014. And then I believe, months after that, we kept on hearing if there's other quote unquote victims, right, that were coming forward, or that they were, searching out, I should say, or even coming forward, because at this time they were repeatedly playing this on the news. It wasn't just that news aired on August and then we didn't hear anything about it afterwards. It was an ongoing, obviously because of the controversial going nationwide, but also Daniel's case in 2014 and then 2015. And then Daniel's trial happened in that following year, December of 2015.
Which it wasn't Ferguson. Ferguson was somewhere around there, right?
I'm sorry.
Was Ferguson in that time frame?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ferguson and then Baltimore were happening in 2014.
And your dad was an ex-cop, correct?
Yeah, I mean, he just
What was his
retired, I
thoughts?
think,
Like,
a year
what
or two
was
ago.
his attitude? What was his attitude on all this? Like, what was his initial thoughts at this time?
Yeah, definitely shocked. I'm sure at a point, I'm sure he was probably embarrassed too, because it's like a police officer and your son's being, questioned about an arrest. It made it, obviously it became huge Oklahoma news that even our local hometown paper was reporting on it. I mean, there's no way around it. Like I mentioned, my last name is not common. So obviously they knew there was a connection between Daniel and then my dad. And so, my parents were definitely really shocked. I mean, they were just in general, I think, sad, mad that this could even happen. And at this point, we're still trying to learn information. Like, did Daniel do this? Right. I mean, that was, I'm sure my parents were thinking, he's innocent this whole time. You know how, like, I like to go back about how sometimes family members might have those blinders on, right? About someone in their family being convicted of something that they supposedly didn't do or did do. And then, to decipher, if they're telling the truth or not. So it was kind of one of those things that, as a family, we always kept close contact in regards to, did Daniel do this, and, I would say our family is very open. We're, able to discuss anything. It's not one of those things that, we don't talk about that kind of thing. No, we talk about pretty much everything, so, it was definitely something that we always kept, at the forefront throughout all of this. And even still to this day, about Daniel's, about his supporting him and all of that. So,
is your dad a retired police officer or?
Yes, but he did go back to work again. So he's, but he retired as lieutenant, for the police department, and he did 25 years, I believe. And then he did 20 years in the Air Force as well. So, he's
Wow.
dedicated to law enforcement.
So was there any doubt in the family about Daniel's innocence? I mean, at this stage, like, I know that you probably information was pretty limited. You're getting Daniel's side of the story, but you're also seeing what the mainstream media was saying at the time, which was not good. I lived this. I was a very fresh cop. So, this case broke my heart from day one. I emotionally struggle with this case, still to this day. But what was there ever any doubt at the beginning stages of Daniel's innocence?
I wouldn't say necessary doubt, but all we heard was from him, right? So we were basing our of what he's telling us at this point, but not necessarily of what the evidence was at this time. We didn't get a hold of the evidence. I would say I want to say we started towards the fall of that 2014 is when we actually were able to start reviewing some of the information that was coming to us.
What was your initial thoughts on that evidence?
I didn't see anything necessarily that stood out as far as what evidence they had. I knew that they had questioned them, several of the women. They had some interviews at this time, but it was more of a high level. It wasn't in depth of exactly, because they were still going through the preliminary questioning of them. And so that's kind of just basically the police reports. So it wasn't too much that I was able to read, but enough that made me question not necessarily his innocence, but what do they have really that's going to that convict him.
Did you have any doubts, or were you just like, my brother's innocent?
No, I kept an empty mind, empty, I guess, what's the right word?
Open.
I definitely was open.
An open
like,
mind.
If Daniel have done this, then, I like to mention this part is I feel like I'm very level-headed. If I see something that is not right, I can say, hey, look, this does not look right, right? And kind of like one of the things I like to go back to is throughout this finding about Daniel's case and standing by him through all of this, if there was anything that I ever thought throughout this whole time going through Daniel's case, that I thought that there was anything that said that Daniel was guilty, if there was any evidence that pointed to it. For me, honestly, it would be easier for me to just back off and say, you know what, Daniel, you deserve this. It's less stress for me to not have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis, because I'm Daniel's voice out here outside of the prison walls. And for me, I would rather back off and not do anything, but I can't, because there's not one single piece of evidence that I have ever came across that made me think that Daniel's guilty of any of the charges that he's been accused of. And so that's kind of where my passion comes with all of this, is just because of what I've read and had access to of throughout the years of the evidence, through the case. And then I flew back and went every day to Daniel's 6-week trial. And every day I heard everything that was happening. I saw how, the news reporters that were in there didn't tweet and air in the evening news of what they just heard in the same courtroom that I did, yet alone I'm hearing completely different evidence. I'm hearing evidence that points to Daniel's innocent, yet nothing was reported on it. So some of those things is very frustrating, but sorry to go on a little tangent about that, but that's kind of where.
No, I mean, that's what we want to hear about. Like, I want to hear about, so you're saying that you're sitting in the courtroom and you're hearing a different story than what mainstream media is tweeting to the public.
Exactly. And that happened through all of the allegations. It was interesting to hear, because I sat through preliminary trial, I sat through during the actual trial, and to hear the women change their stories from what I read on the police reports. I had my notes in there. Then I had what they were saying during the preliminary hearing, then what they were saying during trial. And their stories changed multiple times. And so to me, it was baffling to hear all of those things that were being said, yet nothing was being reported on the outside in Daniel's, in reference to Daniel's innocence at this point. At that time, the media strictly was Daniel's guilty. I mean, that's how they portrayed it. That's what they were wanting to say. And at this time, we didn't speak to the media, right? It was advised not to really say anything. If I can take back things that I know now, I definitely would be the one that's banging on the news reporters' doors saying, hey, look, give me the time. I'm going to talk to you guys. Now it's a different story now that Daniel's been convicted. Media is kind of your friend, in that sense, where you need to be that voice for yourself and not stay silent.
Drew, why is it that you become from an admin background? Why is it that we're always told to keep completely silent, even though when we know that the voice being spoken on our behalf is completely wrong? Why are we always told as civilians, or that when we're on the wrong side of the channel, why are we always told to stay completely quiet? And it's kind of like Ron DeSantis versus Trump, right? I've heard a lot of talk of like, why doesn't DeSantis speak up against Trump, or why does he allow him to keep going? Why is it that the victim in this card, why are we always told the ones to be quiet? Why does the loudmouth always get to have the voice, and the other guy just has to be quiet?
Yeah, it's the recency is the theory that like it's the first to the microphone that says everything, and there's no greater example of that than somebody associated with this case, a guy named Ben Crump. Like he's going to get on the camera and he's going to start listing off all of the bad things that happened in this case. Like Breonna Taylor was asleep in her bed when police shot and killed her. Well, he doesn't have to be correct. He can be in the ballpark. He's not under oath to say anything. So he can paint the picture to taint the jury before the jury's even picked. And what the attorney on the defense side, and I find this like, this was a turning point in the country because of social media, like, Freddie Gray and Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and all this in Daniel's. This is Daniel's like right in this stew of the perfect moment first when social media took firestorm, and all of a sudden victims suspects became victims, and except in this case for some reason, right? Because in this case, it was a police officer, therefore he must be guilty. So the cops are guilty of committing crimes when they're working, and they're also guilty of committing crimes like Daniel, in the media's eyes. But what essentially what we're told to be quiet is to your point, Eric, is like, look no further than Daniel's interrogation. He gave a truthful, honest in like nervous laughter kind of interview that you would expect to give if you were asked these questions too. A couple of things occurred. Like he pulled over a woman with a 30-year suspended license and he didn't arrest her. She smelled a little bit like alcohol and she had some pills on her. He didn't arrest her. He's thinking, I don't know what he's thinking. If I were him, I would be thinking, God, what did I mean, where are they going with this? Like, are they going to fire me for not arresting her or what? And then out of left field, they just swing and hit him in the jaw with all these sexual battery allegations. And then they just take it from there. So I think the best offense in this whole thing is to just keep quiet. I mean, a police department, when there's an officer involved shooting, they're not going to comment. They're not going to say a word about it because your words will be used against you. There's no greater.
But we just sat here and heard Jenny say that if she could go back in time, she would have been a bigger voice and she would have said some of the things that she was thinking. And I think there's got to be some kind of a fine line. I think like we take these hard stances of we're going to be silent, so we're going to be silent. And I don't think anything should be a hard stance. I think everything is kind of like a gray area. And I think at some point it's wise to stand up and fight back. I mean, if somebody would have got up and explained trace DNA to the media, this case might have turned out differently, but that story never got told.
Yeah, that was already after the fact. And I don't want to leave you out of the conversation here, Jenny, but I think that in hindsight, yes, like in hindsight, Jenny's like, man, I just wish I would have spoke up. I guarantee at the time, though, the attorney, like, you don't know what you don't know when you don't know it. So I guarantee at the time, the attorney was like, no contact with the media. Let me handle this, because it's more of a firestorm for the attorney to have to, or the defense team to have to handle. If you say something just a little bit untoward that the media can twist and put into the juror's mind or whatever. So where you're right, I do understand that we should have it like a family member. How many people in law enforcement have an advocate like Jenny, or how many people in law? There's examples that the Ben Darby case and Matthew Mistretta just had very strong family members, a strong support system that's able to do that speaking for him. But a lot of it is done after the fact, if you'll remember. Right.
Yeah, I think it's too late, though. The damage has already been done. And I referenced the Mattingly case. Like Mattingly's story, although luckily for Mattingly, he was found innocent, but his story hasn't changed. I mean, you ask anybody. I mean, I talk in my distillery all the time about the Breonna Taylor case, and everybody still believes that initial narrative that came out. Yeah. And so my question to you, Jenny, is like, if you were to be able to give an opinion, I mean, if you were able to give like your hindsight to somebody else going through a situation, are you saying that, hey, somebody should get up and talk in their behalf and stop letting the media just tell one story? Because I personally feel in this case, only one story was told for 6 years.
Oh, right.
For 6 years, nobody told the story that podcasts are just now, including ours, are just now starting to tell.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely Daniel's voice, I think you can see the tide turning, because obviously after he got convicted, everyone says he deserved it, blah, blah, blah. But then, it was great because Daniel's private investigator, former private investigator Brian Bates, he started a website, and then I started a website. We were able to get some communication and some facts out there for people to start looking into Daniel's case. And I think that definitely helped get the ball going. And then obviously ABC 2020 did a story. They contacted us, and we were able to get Daniel's case, and we were able to say our side of our fight for Daniel's innocence. And then obviously they did their piece on Cover Daniel's story. And then we had Michelle Malkin that did an amazing job with multiple documentaries as far as covering Daniel's case. And I highly suggest, if you guys get a chance to watch, I'm sure you guys already have, but for your viewers, watch Michelle Malkin, Daniel Holtzclaw, and then the title is Daniel in the Den. And that kind of gives you a 90-minute overview in depth of Daniel's case. You can also watch the 2-hour interrogation of Daniel's case, also of the two detectives, also talking with Michelle Malkin. But it took a while to get someone to actually be brave enough, Michelle Malkin, to cover Daniel's story, because a lot of people did not want to cover it. It's a very touchy subject and touchy case, just in general with the different
It's definitely
factors.
one that you don't want to be on the wrong side of the fence on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
You
No,
want to get canceled.
No, and not even that. It's just like, I don't want to stand up for a rapist. You know, if I'm wrong, I don't want to be the guy who's like, oh man,
like as a father or
for suicide.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, I do think it's kind of. And first of all, forgive me, I don't remember the 2020 piece, but was it favorable? Would you say, or where would you rate it on the scale of 1 to 10?
They did do some good points in there. I would definitely say their title of it is misleading. It said what the dash cam never saw. Daniel never had a dash cam. So there's so many myths. Thanks for bringing that up, because there's so many myths out there, right? People say, well, how about his body cam? How about his dash cam? Oklahoma City Police Department did not have any of those at that time. Right. And there's so many myths out there in Daniel's case, which is so hard because you have these keyboard warriors that want to go out there and say what they think that they know about the case, and it just gets sometimes so frustrating.
Let's clear some of those up, Jenny. Let's clear some of those up. I've listened to almost every podcast ever made about Daniel Holtzclaw. Let's if we would take a little bit of time, disclose some of those myths that I have found to be mythical. The first one being that he is a roid raging toxic male. Mm-hmm. You, as an experience, as his sister, and you grew up with him, did you ever find him to be a toxic, as he's been called on several podcasts, and a roid rager? Did he have an anger problem? Not that. I don't know how that has to do with rape, but was he a roid raging toxic male, as many of these podcasts?
No, I would say far from that. From the very beginning, Daniel always worked out. He was always in the gym. That was his dedication. He loved it, right? In and out. He even, we talk about this all the time too. I think he even skipped, his freshman and senior prom. I think it was both of them, just because he wanted to go work out. That was his thing. He loved working out. And obviously it paid off, with him going to football for college and so forth. So that's his passion. Even in prison, he's working out every single day. That's just what he does. And I wouldn't ever say that he was ever a roid rager. He took supplements, but he was never into, shooting up roids and being like this meathead, quote unquote, meathead jock or whatever you want to call them. But
he was
far from it.
Yeah, he was an NCAA athlete as well.
He did get to go on the Detroit Lions. Was it the
roster?
The roster. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he made it to the big leagues, and so he was very highly regulated and tested all through college.
Well, the point being, he was tested. Yeah.
Now, how was he as a brother to you?
He was great. We're a year apart from each other, so we were close. We had the same circle of friends, or mutual friends, I would say. And then, we liked the same music. I like to work out too. So we did a lot of things together. I was actually more closer with him than I am with my sister, just because we have a lot more in common. But I've always been his advocate. Even throughout college, I helped him, put the stats out there for his football. I've always been his cheerleader. We've always been close. He's always been a great little brother, but big brother in that sense that he's, a lot bigger than me, but always close. I enjoyed it. I went up to Michigan while he was up there a few times to watch him play football with my parents. So yeah, I was always excited to see him, come home during the holidays.
I saw the
Nothing
myth about
I
him
saw,
being
going back to, did you see anything growing up? Was he, there's nothing that I ever saw, that I ever witnessed, that
no indication
feel uncomfortable or, yeah.
Now, some of these podcasts also paint him to be a womanizer. I'd like to know where they got their evidence. Most of these podcasts that I listen to, and I said this in our previous breakdowns, they make a lot of allegations, but they don't give you any reference to where they got them. Basically, internet sleuths like ourselves, except we try to give kind of a perspective or a background on why we believe something. Where do these sleuths come up with womanizer? Did you see him as a womanizer? Was he any more of a pervert than I am? No, don't answer that because I'm a huge pervert. Let's just be real. I got 5 kids.
In college, Daniel had 2 serious girlfriends. One of them actually moved from Michigan down to Oklahoma, and whenever he got onto the police department, and so he had 2 serious girlfriends. I've never heard Daniel referenced as a womanizer. He was in committed relationships with both of them.
Not at the same time, separately.
Yeah. separately, and so I've always known him to have serious girlfriends.
And now I've heard, and I'm asking you as a source, what was their relationship? What is their opinion now on Daniel? Did they publicly come out and say like Daniel was an abuser or he had rapey tendencies? I mean, we know what rapey tendencies is. I've got a close friend right now who's dating a guy, and she tells me their escapades, and I'm like, that seems borderline creepy. Do they have anything like that they've come out against Daniel saying that he was borderline creepy or he had some kind of weird kinks? We don't kink shame, but for the sake of
even still to this day, they still support Daniel, and I like to also talk about this too, because even after this had happened, I had asked both of them, the one that he was currently living with, and then the other one that he was with while he was in Michigan for college, because the girlfriend that he was with when all of this had happened, I asked both of them, is there anything that you guys ever saw? Because when you're in a relationship, right, you have you don't see these red flags, but once you get out of the relationships, you're like, okay, I see those red flags now. And still to this day, they still do not see anything that ever made them think that Daniel was guilty of anything. And I even asked him like personal questions. Did you see him when he got home? Did he jump in the shower? Was he acting weird? Did you see anything on his phone? Or was there anything suspicious about him? Was he controlling? Like, how was he? And they had nothing bad to say about him.
So I don't have any data to back this up, but it's just like from the sociological standpoint, just what I've experienced in life. There are two classes of people that are, when you got a cop's kid or a preacher's kid, they either are like 90 degrees off this way or 90 degrees off this way. You seem that, you and Daniel and your other sister, it seems like you're just from a wholesome family. Everybody is, you're all seemingly on the same path. I mean, was there any, maybe not sexual deviance, but was there any like trouble growing up? Did he always want to be a cop, or did was there like was he a truant? Did he drink too early, as a 14-year-old kid? Or
no, I would say he was like a normal teen. I think all of us, we turned out really good. We were normal teenagers, just we went off to college, started our careers, all three of us. As far as anything, we were our dinner time was at 5:30 for the most time, unless my dad was working night shift. We all ate at the same dinner table growing up, and then obviously when we started working when we were teenagers, we didn't see each other as much, but we still were a close family and still are to this day. And so there's nothing that ever indicated to any of us that that there was any troubling situation, with him growing up, even throughout his college years. Nothing that would have ever pointed to, us being suspicious of his behavior.
So this is why I say in the beginning that of the toll that people don't realize that this puts on an entire family. I mean, you have a 25-year. First of all, you have an Air Force veteran who retired from the military, and then he did 25 years of service to his community as a cop. And then you have a mother that raised children that demanded you sit at the dinner table all together at 5:30. Three wonderful kids, and then you get this allegation of like probably the worst, somebody in a position of authority that has the ability to arrest somebody and commit sexual batteries. Then all of a sudden they start piling on all these charges. Did that take a toll like on the family dynamic, or did that bond you even closer?
I would definitely say throughout all of this, it has definitely brought us a lot closer. We don't take our time for granted in that sense that we never knew that in 2014 our lives would forever change, and us not knowing that if we're going to have another Christmas with Daniel outside of prison, or any of those holidays, that we used to always spend together. So, as a full family. So it is very, the toll is definitely an interesting thing, just because it has been very stressful. It has been very emotional. It's definitely been a roller coaster of a ride, to say, throughout all of this. And you definitely have to have thick skin because, there's people that will write you the meanest things, but it's like, come on, I don't even know who you are. I'll never see you again. And if you are ignorant enough to write me a message about Daniel's case and not learn the facts, then that's on you. You know, I'm not here to change anyone's opinion. I'm here to tell people to look into Daniel's case. Do your research yourself. Don't just get spoon-fed from what the media is saying. Actually learn a little bit more about the case and give me reasons. Ask me questions, because that's what I want people to do. I want people to reach out. You know, I try to get back to as many messages as I can to people and let them know, you know, if they have any questions about Daniel's case or how he's doing or whatever the case may be. I'm here to like tell people like here, and I'll send them links. Please watch this or listen to Daniel's podcast. You know, there's so much of online that is in favor of Daniel, that is saying the truth. And, you know, we have documents to prove everything that we're speaking on. It's not that we don't have anything and just say, oh, Daniel's innocent. We have facts that prove that Daniel's innocent, you know, and we have, you know, evidence to prove that, you know, and it's just a matter of now, because Daniel is convicted, to overturn a wrongful conviction is so hard.
So that's I guess the next question. I know that there are issues with, I guess, the prosecutor. The judge has found himself in hot water from that case specifically. I mean, you know, we are talking about 9 years, so life does change for a lot of people. But 9 years, you know, Daniel's been sitting there in prison, an innocent man in a lot of people's eyes, and you know, so where are we from the standpoint of overturning the conviction, getting a new trial, or something along that way?
Yeah. So currently, right now, our attorney is working on Daniel's post-conviction, you know, presenting new evidence. So, you know, we're working on that, gathering the evidence, and some of the evidence that we're using is the things that we came out from Daniel's deposition, right? From the accusers that went on stand and admitted later on that Daniel never touched them or so forth. So we're able to include that. So we're just working on that currently right now. And, you know, it takes a while to get all of that, you know, put together, but we're currently still, we're still fighting for him. You know, we're still working on getting Daniel's story told. You know, right now there is a new district attorney that took over after District David Prater that was in office, and he was in office, gosh, I don't even know how many years. But we finally have fresh eyes, you know, hopefully with the Oklahoma County justice system that wants to hopefully you know, look at cases. And luckily for her, she's been on the Oklahoma Innocence Project. So she knows about wrongful conviction cases. And her son was actually pardoned by Trump. And so she knows both. And another cool thing about her, too, is she's actually prosecuted Timothy McVeigh, which was the Oklahoma City bombing. So she has a background of both, on both sides, right? An attorney that fights for people that have been wrongfully convicted, and then prosecutor that actually tried cases too. So she's been a well-rounded, I think, candidate, and then luckily she's in office now. So hopefully, you know, she'll look into Daniel's case, and then also Daniel's judge in that case, Timothy Henderson. He actually is on hot waters in the sense that he is being investigated right now. The Oklahoma Bar Association is right now reviewing because he's been caught having sexual relationships with assistant district attorneys. And this also is during the time of Daniel's case, but unfortunately we have not been able to find any evidence yet that points to that judge having anything with Daniel's prosecutor, but it has overturned 2 cases so far in Oklahoma because he was having sexual relationships with those prosecutors that were trying the case. But it does fall in line with the 2017, the 2-day secret hearing that was on Daniel's case that where Daniel's attorney was not present during the 2-day court hearing. And so, we're hoping that maybe the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals may look at that and say, well, you know, the judge had some kind of favor to the assistant DA's office, right? Because he was having sexual relationships with them. So we'll see what avenue we can do. I mean,
the biggest pervert in this case happens to be the judge.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. Sounds
There's a lot of twists
about
and
right.
turns in
Now,
this case.
there is. There's so many. Listen, I'm not going to get into it, but you can go back to the other 3 episodes that are about 2 hours each almost on this case. I've always been very connected to this case in weird ways. One, my mother-in-law's in town. I just had a baby yesterday. That's why we're pre-recording this, and it's not going out live.
Congratulations.
Typically, thank you. But I had my 5th baby, 1 wife, 5 babies. And so my mother-in-law is in town, and I just said I'm going to do a podcast with Jenny Holtzclaw. She's like, "Who's that?" I said, "Daniel Holtzclaw's sister." She's like, "Who's Daniel Holtzclaw?" And I said, "Well, I don't have time to explain it to you. I have like 6 minutes before I have to be there. Let me just show you them reading the guilty plea." And of course, you see Daniel just crying, and I said, "This is what started all of it." And she was like, "Well, was he guilty or innocent?" And I was like, "I'll tell you after my show. Let you listen to it." But I say that to say that, I truly believe after digging through all of this evidence that I have an opinion on Daniel Holtzclaw. And I'd like to ask you, before I give you my opinion, is you're the sister. And you've been able to talk to his ex-girlfriends. Mm-hmm. You've talked to the defense attorney. You've talked to the prosecutor. You've talked to everybody.
Prosecutor.
What's that?
I've not talked to the prosecutor.
Oh, you've never talked to the prosecutor?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
They never once questioned anyone in our family, which I feel like is very odd. Wouldn't they want to ask?
What? Why did the defense not call you guys up?
No, actually,
Why?
no one got called up for Daniel's.
Not even as a character witness or anything?
Mm-mm.
That doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem legit. I don't know much about being a lawyer. I've sat through a lot of cases, but as a juror, it would mean a lot to have the sister get up there and say that, like, my brother never had any. It would as a juror to see ex-girlfriends support their former boyfriend and say that they didn't have any rapey vibes from him. It would paint a huge picture for me as a juror. Do you guys ever question that?
Yeah, looking back, I think that was his strategy, so we went with it. If we were to change anything now, I would definitely have been more vocal and say, "No, put me on the stand."
Yeah, but I love that how they say that that's the attorneys. And listen, I'm not a victim of anything that Daniel Holtzclaw has, but I'm a victim of listening to an attorney that just absolutely fucking screwed the pooch. Why? I think it's not the strategy of of Daniel's defense attorney. It seems like it's the strategy of every defense attorney across the board. Like, I feel like they've drawn a hard line in the sand and say, this is the way we're going to do things. Sometimes it's going to work and sometimes it's not. And that's just the way we're going to do things. Does it frustrate you at all?
Well, definitely, just because I feel like the reason why they do that is because prosecutors will try to, possibly, put someone on stand and make it seem something that it's not. Like, have someone answer something that might not be.
Sure, but you don't think that the defense attorney saw that this was not going his way and he should maybe throw an audible?
Sitting in the trial, though, you would have. I wish it was recorded. I wish it was live, right? Live stream, like other cases.
Did it seem like it was favorable in Daniel's court?
Yes,
I can totally see that. I can totally see this happening. That you're sitting there because it just based on.
We were confident.
Yeah. This was. I can. The only way I can describe this is from the interrogation on. It's just the Twilight Zone. Like, things just like. This can't be happening. This is an alternate reality. There's no way that this can be happening. And I can only imagine when you're sitting in that courtroom, hearing the testimony, hearing witnesses say, "No, I've never seen this guy in my entire life." Well, you're on the stand as somebody that he sexually battered or sexually assaulted or whatever. I mean, you would think that the jury would be like, "Yeah, this is a load of bullshit. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we away from our families?" Is that the impression you got while you were in the courtroom?
Yeah, absolutely. We were certain that Dan was not going to get convicted. I mean, when we went when the jurors went off to deliberation, we said, "There's no way. What evidence do they have?" Like, we were all confident that Daniel was not going to get a guilty verdict. It wasn't until I would say that the jurors came out from deliberation and seeing their reaction and how they were sitting and some started crying, had tears in their eyes. I definitely would say that we definitely did not see it coming.
And
know,
this was
it
all
more
based on the
shocking.
vaginal DNA, which was touch DNA that was never really explained to the jury. And have you spoken with the jurors, any of the jurors since then? Have they reached out to you, to your family?
No, they haven't reached out to me. I wish that they would, just so we can learn a little bit more. But they're very quiet. But there are a few of them, like some of them spoke to 2020. Some of them spoke to Crime Watch
Have you
Daily.
reached out to them? Have you reached out to them?
I have reached out to one in hopes that that person would be inclined to possibly learning a little bit more about the case. But I haven't heard a response.
I want to admit, I want to say, Jenny, this is what I find most admirable about this whole thing. Like, as is the climate in today's world, you need drama or you need sensational headlines or whatever. You need to sell a story, right? And that's what the media did in this case. And they don't even want to listen to Michelle Malkin because she comes from a conservative background or she has conservative opinions. Therefore, her opinion is not as strong as anybody else's because that's what the media does. But you and your family and the defense and Mr. Bates and everybody else seems to just say, I don't need to say anything else other than the truth. So it's not like you're going out and creating a 3-ring circus or pulling in this juror and making with an aha moment. Like, I knew it. I knew you. You're just basically letting all of the facts speak for themselves. To me, is even more solid ground than anybody could ever imagine. And that's probably, I would hope that's what Daniel runs on that hope that, look, truth is eventually going to come out if we just keep telling the truth.
Exactly. And that's what we've been doing is just, taking the opportunity, like me coming on here, for example, it's a way for me to get Daniel's story told, hopefully to your viewers, and then they're interested and want to learn a little bit more about Daniel's case. And, a lot of podcasts take on a case and it gets more, coverage. Right. And so, throughout this whole time, I've been reaching out to anyone that will listen to me telling Daniel's story to them and hoping that they'll open the doors or want to cover Daniel's story so it is more in Daniel's favor. I'm getting more doors opening nowadays than I have, when this first had to happen, back in 2014, 2015. So there's definitely a lot more avenues now. And, social media can be your friend too. I post a lot on my Facebook and Free Daniel Holtzclaw, and then underneath mine, Jenny Holtzclaw. I put a lot of facts out there. That's all you can do, right? Is just put things out there. If people want to learn more, they'll learn more. And so that's kind of where I've taken this, is just until, I would like for Daniel's case to be covered in Netflix, but we haven't had much luck of reaching out to someone with Netflix. It's actually very hard to get a hold of. But, there's other avenues out there. I'm hoping that we do get a little more coverage, and people do want to take that stance and not be scared of covering Daniel's case because, quote unquote, he might be a rapist or, it's controversial just because the whole Me Too, Black Lives Matter, people that hate cops. There's so many different touchies cases, right?
It's the
scenarios with Daniel's case that people don't want to touch it.
It really is the perfect storm, and there's nothing more depressing to me than this case. And but what's exciting is that GhostBed is offering 40% off right now on GhostBeds at ghostbed.com/Wolfpack. Veterans Day is right around the corner, and GhostBed throws down for veterans and first responders all across the country because their bed's made in the good old USA. And they absolutely love first responders. They absolutely love veterans, and they absolutely throw the biggest banger sales. I'm in contact with the owners of GhostBed, with the head dudes of GhostBed. I'm in contact with them all the time, and I can tell you there's nobody that's a bigger advocate than the guys over at GhostBed, because they truly believe that a first responder or a combat veteran or a guy that's in the thick of it, they know that they are going to be more protected if those veterans and first responders are having good night's rests. And so that they make every one of these beds saying, dude, the guy that saves my life, the hero in the dark, I want him to be like fully rested and fully ready to go. So every bed is made that way. I don't know. I just made that part up, but I imagine that that's why they're made. Right now, GhostBed is offering 40% off across the board. Get that adjustable base. Get the massage mode, the zero gravity mode. They've got 0% down, 0% financing. And that's if you have firefighter credit, state trooper credit. You can get one of these beds. Head over to ghostbed.com/Wolfpack today and get you sleep so good. It's absolutely scary. Jenny, coming back to the case, sorry, I have to do ad reads, and I have to make them salacious and entertaining because that's what keeps us in business and able to tell these stories. I have a question for you, and I've been maybe wanting to ask you this question since the mid-2000s, even though I didn't know you. It is a question I've always wanted to ask. Jenny, what % of a chance is he guilty? In your head, with all the evidence you've seen, what % of a chance is he guilty?
From everything that I have read, viewed, listened to, everything looking at this case, I can 100% say confidently that I believe that there's 0% chance that Daniel's guilty. I 100% believe that Daniel's innocent, and I will continue to fight for Daniel because there's not one piece of evidence that points to Daniel's guilt of it. So there's definitely, I mean, I'm Daniel's advocate. I'm going to be fighting for him till he's free.
Wow, that's
I
incredible.
have no doubt that he will be free. I do. I have faith that he will be free. I mean, it's just a matter of time. And unfortunately, to overturn wrongful convictions usually is between 11 and 14 years. And that's on average, right? It just really depends because there's so many different avenues that you go through to, post conviction and all these appeals that you have to. And then obviously at the state levels where it starts, but there's people in Oklahoma, the Court of Criminal Appeals, they don't believe, right, that the state could have convicted a police officer or anyone for that matter. It's Oklahoma. There have been convictions that have been overturned, and there have been people that have been found innocent because the Oklahoma City Crime Lab, there was, you guys can just Google Black Magic, the former forensic analyst.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She fabricated evidence saying that rug hair was pubic hair on cases. So Oklahoma City Police Department has a history of corruption if you go back, and let me bring this up too, because I just mentioned the former analyst, Black Magic. So Daniel's, the two detectives, right? There was a male and female. The male, Detective Rocky Gregory, his mother-in-law was the forensic analyst in Daniel's case.
Never once disclosed during the trial, was it?
Never once. It was not until
Have you met these detectives? We're pro-detective. We're pro-law enforcement, but I got to be honest with you. After watching these two detectives, I might hate them more than almost anybody else in law enforcement, aside from Danny Perkins.
It's mind-boggling. If you guys go to YouTube and look up the Michelle Malkin 2-hour detective interview, oh my gosh,
what a bunch of clout
detectives?
Chasing.
Well,
It's the worst display of investigation that I've ever seen in a lot of these cases. We've covered some really screwed up cases, I talked with some great detectives. That was the weakest display of investigating that I've seen in almost all of these cases.
They probably have great abilities. I don't doubt that part. There was a lot of hunches they were running on in that initial interview and the bluffing about calling the girlfriend, whether they called her or not. And then they just went down this rabbit hole, like the investigative tunnel vision of, well, now he's lying about having sex with his girlfriend. But that's not even really germane to the conversation. Like, so we caught him in a lie. So I wonder at what point did they lose control of this? In other words, did it get up to a lieutenant? Did it get up to a captain or a deputy chief or a chief that says, okay, I'll pull out all stops. We're going to get this guy convicted.
This to me look like a political headhunt. This to me is the stereotypical thing that I've preached about forever on this show. I feel it in my bones, and I'd love to get these guys on the show, and I'd love to talk to them about it if it's not true. But it absolutely looked like the exact the climbing of the political ladder. This is the case. This is the case that's going to get me to where I need to go. This is going to get me to the next level. He's got to be guilty. If I find this cop guilty, if I prove that this cop is guilty, I'll be the chief. You know what I mean? That's what this appeared to me to be.
Well, Detective Kim Davis, that was her big case. She retired right after Daniel's.
That's her thing, you know. And she
And it was
still
like
talks
she
about
wanted that like big case right before she left. Same thing, Rocky Gregory. He got promoted to do homicides right after
Of course he
Daniel's
did.
case.
Of course he did.
Both of them went off to do conferences and speak to.
Of course they did.
You know, I mean, there was benefits for them to do this. You know, and then obviously
political police officers poisoning the profession. I've said it 1,000 times. It's absolutely disgusting.
And what about Lieutenant Munzie? I mean, like he was.
We don't know exactly why he. Yeah, exactly. We don't know why he ended up not on the police department. He resigned. I believe he resigned. But even he was something that I questioned about, just because you know, he had that profile that he wanted the detectives to go off of and just question Black females. Why would you only just question one race? Well, if Daniel is a serial rapist, wouldn't you ask and go through all his records? Don't you care about other races?
No, we don't care about the whites or the Asians. You know that.
There's male DNA on there. You know, he has one of the more poignant quotes of a deposition. He says, "No, you can get an expert to tell you whatever you want." He was talking about DNA, but for some reason that doesn't work against the defense. You know what I mean? Like he's trying to say, "Look, defense attorney, don't try to throw your weight around with me. You can get an expert to say whatever you want." Well, what do you think the prosecution does? They do the exact same thing. And listen, I'm a multi-decades cop. I am, like as Eric said, pro law enforcement, pro prosecution of guilty people. But I'll tell you, using deadly force against somebody kills them right then and there. And that officer is going to have to question for the rest of their lives whether they made the right decision or not. If you put someone in prison for 284 or 286 years, you have done more damage than just taking their life, because they are now left to flounder in jail. I get that they're alive. I understand that. But Daniel is in a personal hell that he knows he's innocent. His family knows he's innocent, which is completely different that people in society have forgotten. This is not a guilty or innocent case. It's or a guilty or not guilty case. He is innocent. He is not there's no guilt associated with him, as you're saying. And and I still say it's not complimentary. It's telling that your family is like, look, you all can believe what you want to believe. This did not happen. Now, how many adults do you know, other than you and your family and myself and Eric and Michelle Malkin, that are going to put a personal reputation, Bates, that are going to put a personal reputation on gambling on whether this guy raped people or not? Like it's the math is just not there.
Yeah, and you dive into each of the case, right? Each of the allegations. You will then want to fight for Daniel, because you'll see there's no evidence that points to it. And obviously we've dissected each of the cases, same thing as the former investigator, Brian Bates, he's investigated each of them. Same thing, Michelle Malkin, she looked in all of Daniel's cases, that's why a lot of people are very strong about Daniel's innocence, is because we have reviewed everything. There's nothing that points to him being guilty, so that's where the passion comes from, is because there isn't anything, if you break it down, not what the media says and what Wikipedia says about Daniel.
Or really a lot of these podcasts that come out with it. Now, let me ask you one last question, and then I'm done for the night. Drew probably has a couple of questions, but my last question of the night is, how is Daniel doing? I don't imagine it's easy being a cop in jail, in prison. How is he doing? How's he holding up? How does he get by to his day to day?
He's doing good. I mean, for the most part, he's on a routine. He wakes up, has his breakfast. He goes and works out. That's he must get his workout in. He'll play cards. He does talk with other inmates. It's not, obviously he's on guard 24/7, just because of, a lot of them do know that I would say all of them know that he's a police officer because they have played 2020 in prison. They have played other shows that have covered Daniel's case. And then just yard talk, right? A lot of people find out why you're in there and who you really are. Even though he is underneath an alias name, people know who he is. So that's not anything that's hidden within there. But for the most part, I mean, he knows, we communicate with him. We let him know what's happening. I let him know that we're on the podcast. That gives him a lot of hope, right? Because it's another avenue of Daniel's story being told. We were doing Facebook Lives where he was able to call in and do that. And that's kind of been put on hold because that's another whole situation with the Department of Corrections, doesn't want, I think, the story being out there or Daniel being able to have a voice inside the prison walls. But as far as, everything else with Daniel, I mean, he gets letters from supporters. He knows people are always wondering how he's doing, sending him birthday cards, Christmas cards. And that kind of keeps his momentum going. But I think overall, Drew, like what you had mentioned, with knowing that he has family out here and knowing that the case is going to get overturned, he has faith in that, and all he has is his truth, right? He knows the truth. We're out here fighting for him. So, hopefully all stars aligned and Daniel's case can get another, get overturned and we can get a new trial. We're not asking for Daniel to get free. We're asking for us to have a new trial. There's a lot more that we know as a family, but also the attorneys. A lot of things were not discovered till after trial. So there's a lot more that we're going to come into a new trial and be able to, and obviously speak to the media this time and be able to get Daniel's story told. I mean, continue getting Daniel's story told, I should say.
Yeah, I believe that that's also very telling. Also, just the fact that this isn't about like let's exonerate him and let's get him free and let's never free. Let's put it before the court again.
Mm-hmm.
I know that I can't even compare what's happening here, but I ran into a bump in the road in my career. And there came a point where, I persevered through it and everybody was just kind of like, hey, you're going to go after them or you're going to do this or you're going to do that. And it was always kind of like, no, because I just wanted to get it behind me. I just wanted to move on. I can see, though, with some of this being like prosecutorial misconduct potentially, or these detectives, fabricating stuff. Who knows? And who knows what the trial court will hear again? I mean, is there any? Are we just like we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, or is there like just a venom that's building up that got him in that position in the first place?
Yeah. I would definitely say that, for example, one thing that I want to do is make it clear to people that the prosecutor shouldn't be able to just state something at the end of their closing statement that's false information, right? As you guys, I know that you guys cover that on one of your guys' podcasts on Daniel, was how the prosecutor said in his closing statement that there was vaginal cells, on Daniel's pants, which that's false, right? And that's the last thing the jurors heard before they went to deliberation. People need to be held accountable. The detectives, they need to be held accountable. Why do they miswrite a lot of their police reports and not state multiple times that the woman denied 7 times that Daniel ever touched her? But then that was never once written in the police report. And why were recordings not being recorded?
35 potential quote victim end quote that said that they had no contact with Daniel whatsoever. 35 of them, there was no recording whatsoever.
Exactly. And there's no list. We brought it up in trial. Where's this list of all these people that you guys questioned? They couldn't produce that. So where's that? We're taking your word for it. So there's a lot of things that I think that definitely need to be held accountable when it comes to Daniel being in prison.
I'm convinced, and I'm convicted to help you in any way that I can. I mean, I'm a small voice, but we can be a big voice, synergistically. Hopefully we can get this word spread further out there. I mean, he was convicted in 2015 or 2016, but and it's 2023. But listen, like she said, convictions take a while, or overturning convictions takes even longer. So there's no give up in this situation. I mean, he's, to use a football metaphor, he blocked the punt and they're on the 1 or 2 yard line. He's getting ready to run it all the way back, I hope. But you can't give up until the clock reads 0. And I certainly wish you and your family the best.
Thank you very
If
much.
there's anything that we can do, obviously, as a wolf pack, where can we go to maybe, either donate or follow or, plug your socials?
Yeah, so I would highly suggest going to holtzclawtrial.com. You can go to my Facebook, Jenny Holtzclaw, and then I can post on there later after we get off of here the link to the fundraiser that we have to continue fighting the legal route to get Daniel's case overturned. And then you can go to freedanielholtzclaw.com as well to learn a little bit more about Daniel's case. There's a lot of videos on there and links, and even as transcripts, and then his appeal that we've done so far.
Wolfpack, we're the #1 growing channel where law enforcement goes to be entertained and informed right now, cruising in at number 11 on the trending charts on Chartable for podcasts across the United States. It costs a lot of money to get to that point. You've seen in the last 3 months that we have grown as a channel exponentially with new cameras, new lights, new microphones for all the hosts. We are looking good and great. We also have the addition of 2 new shows coming onto the network in the next couple of months. If you'd like to support the Fair Stop podcast, you can be a member of our Patreon, where we deliver all sorts of extra content, follow-on interviews. We might even bring on another follow-on interview with Jenny Holtzclaw if there are things that develop in this case that maybe not take the time of a complete podcast, but maybe we jump on there for 30 minutes. But we have many of the members across the board, all 6 hosts, are putting lots of content on our Patreon that is completely extra. We do 5, we're moving to 6 free shows a week. And so you get 6 free shows a week on YouTube and Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and everywhere else. And so if you want a little bit extra that we go the extra mile for, you can follow us on Patreon. FaireToStop.com is also our website where you can go and be a member there. We do have a lot of other things coming. I did mention that we have 1, potentially 2 new shows coming to the network, Fair to Stop Network, All First Responders, and there'll be more to come on that. As for myself and the Easy, the Breezy, the Steezy, beautiful Dree Breezy, and Miss Jennifer Holtzclaw, our thoughts and prayers go out to Daniel, of course, and we appreciate all the time that you have given us. And I'm sure Daniel appreciates all the time that you've given him. Thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys all tune into Daniel's case and learn more.
All
Thank you,
guys.
everyone.
Until next time, guns up. Giddy up.
Bye-bye.